Hey there, Tracy here for Trinity Stamps, creative team member. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this little portal shaker card using our circle card die and many more. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so I pulled out everything we're going to need, and I will be doing all my cutting and assembling mostly offline. So I'm using our Grillin and Chillin barbecue grate here and the little outside portion. And then that's all I'm using from that. And then I'll be using our circle frame dies, our largest one. I'll be using our circle card and a circle, same size circle for the outside. And then I'm going to be using this little cake. You take the cake die set to get my little ooze out of some green cardstock. I'm going to be using our Halloween Simply Sentimental series. And then I'm going to be using the Oh So Scary Gnome, little ghost gnome. So I'll get everything cut out offline, but also I'm going to be using shaker bits and sticky bits and just all kinds of fun in this card. And then one specialty paper here I have, and any sandable paper will work, but this is the Tim Holtz Ideology Black Craft, and then just some black cardstock and some acetate. Of course, glue and tape and all the things that you need to make shakers. So I've got here my shaker part drying, the frame part drying with some foam, and it's actually some foam from from packaging. To keep something safe, and I decided that it was a perfect thickness and it's black. So what I want to do here is I want to add my ooze, but I can't add it exactly on top because I don't want anything to block where my shaker parts are. And apparently so the reason that I glued that off camera is I had actually glued it with glue and it didn't work and it was a hot mess, so I had to do it over, and I ended up just gluing it with tape, and I'll show you the piece here in a little bit. And these pieces I just added a little bit of darker green with our little blending buddy brushes and some white pen just to kind of give it a little bit of dimension, like it's a drippy drip. And I'm just going to lay these on here and just make sure they don't go over the edge. I could always trim it off, but I don't want to. And you could go all the way to the top, but you're going to have to trim off, and you don't want it too thick. So I thought this was a fun idea, and the funny thing is I was looking at that grate, and I felt like it was probably the only one I didn't use from the latest release. And I felt like, well, I mean, for a lot of us, grilling season is over. So what else could I do with that grate? And trust me, I'm going to make a stencil out of it because it is just a fabulous piece all by itself. Now what I'm going to do here is, it's a little tricky, but it's not impossible. I'm going to be using water to heat emboss. So let's just put the lid on my glue here, or move it aside. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water down onto my mat here. And I'm just going to grab a paintbrush. And I'm going to splatter water on, just like you would splatter on. But I'm just using water. You could water down some embossing ink if you wanted to, but this works just fine. I'm not looking for perfection here. I just want some glow-in-the-dark bits in there. And there's a couple, but I end up it's not being dark enough to show the glow. So you don't see that in this video, but it does glow in the dark. So I'm just going to pour my embossing powder over and shake it off carefully. Make sure that all my little water spots are covered. And this you want to heat from the back, at least until it starts to melt. Because if you heat it from the front, you're just going to evaporate the water and blow off the plastic that is embossing powder. So, and it's very, very hard to heat from the back on camera because, you know, there's just not a lot of space. So my little glow spots aren't perfection. They don't need to be. They're totally in the background. And you could use this idea for anything. It's mainly how you put the card together. So I'll just keep embossing these until they start to melt, and then I'll go from the top. And yeah, you can see that it's blowing little bits off, and that's perfect for me because I'm looking for kind of messy, not necessarily perfection. just so it has that added element. You could totally skip this step. You could totally skip the ooze. Yeah, you know, you do you. Let me just clean up my water here, but this, I'll tell you, is a lot less messy. All right, so I've got, this is a smaller piece, so this is the piece that came out of the center of our circle die, our, words are hard, friends, our circle frames die. So I'm going to glue this down, and I'm going to use the outer portion of one of the frames to get it even on there, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm using some glue that doesn't dry immediately. And then I'm just going to lay this frame down, and then I can scoot my little circle around inside of there until it fits nicely and there's room all the way around, so that when I glue down my shaker part, it will have an even stick, if that makes sense. I'm just going to put a couple of magnets on here and give this a chance to dry and make sure it dries flat, because you definitely want that to dry flat. All right, that's doing its drying. Now I've got my grate bits here, and I'm going to glue down, and see, I end up later on taking that off and taping it down because the glue that I chose to use just wasn't going to do, but it works fine for the grate. So these are all going to get glued together like so. But before I glue them, I want to make this look like it's a worn grate. So we're making a portal here and not a barbecue, but either way. I've got a little sanding tool, and looking for it here, of course. There it is. And I've got a brand new sanding disc on here. And all I'm doing is just sanding off this paper carefully, trying not to munch it up too bad. And you see how it's giving me that metal look, and that's exactly the look I'm looking for. So if you're ever trying to make something look metallic, grab yourself some sandable cardstock. And I bought this black on clearance a long time ago at Joann, you know, before they told us they were going out of business. And look at that, it looks exactly like a metallic grate. And I'm going to do the same with the outside edges here of the what would be the bowl of the barbecue, I guess. So if you know me or you follow me, you know that when I see a die, I sometimes see something different. And this is totally the case here. I saw a grate where we all float down here or something like that. So, you know, thinking Halloween. So I've got those all sanded down, and look at how cool that looks. So now I can stick my acetate down onto it. And I did do it, and then it got really, really messy. So I started over, more or less, and did it again. And that was in particular on the piece you see up there at the top, drying with an acrylic block on it. When I pulled it apart, it was just such a hot mess that I just redid it. So this isn't bad. It's not ideal. The glue that I'm using just was not made to stick to anything but paper to paper, best I could tell. Although this grate sticks down just fine. And I'm just going to glue the 2 long bars and then around the circle edge. And just kind of keeping my glue, you know, as thin as I can. This is a matte glue that is, you know, transparent. And I'm just going to glue all the way around the edge here. And then a little trick that I like to do to make sure my glue doesn't ooze out is to, you know, tamp it down onto something, usually my my mat here, and then it'll just easily clean off. And I'm going to put this offset instead of putting it straight like you would a barbecue grill, although ours probably is never straight because, you know, they go in all kinds of directions. I'm just going to get that all glued down. And that piece is just going to get set aside while we work on other pieces. And any glue that oozed out, I'm just trying to dab off best I can. And the reason you put that there is obviously so the grate has something to stick to, but also as reinforcement. So then I'm just going to add a magnet on top, and I'm going to let that dry completely before I move on. I think the longest parts of these are the drying times, because I do want to make my handles a little bit dimensional. So I'm going to be using this Irresistible Pico embellisher, and it's a bronze color. So I want to keep everything metallic, because you can imagine this is out in the woods and the trees, and any kind of wood would eventually rot, but the metal wouldn't. So we're just going to go just a little bit of thickness here on this embellisher. And just a little bit on each handle, and we'll let that dry. And it only takes about 15 minutes to dry in that thin of a coat. Just make sure it's kind of nice and even on there. Isn't that pretty? I love that stuff. I do not love trying to put the pin back in the hole. I just can't see that well. One of these days I'll have surgery. It will be better. All right, so time for drying. We'll just walk away. Now there's my piece here, and this black foam that you see is actually part of some packaging. And what I've done is I've got this probably 1/8 inch red baloney tape that I put around the edge, and that's what I'm going to use to stick it down. So I'm adding a little anti-static powder to my window here, because what I'm making here is a self-contained shaker. And I'm just going to add some of these shaker pops. And friends, as I'm doing this voiceover, I don't remember the names of things, so I will list them in the description below, anything that's available from the Trinity store. I do have some glow-in-the-dark stars from my stash, and they're little stars and moons. So there we've got another glow factor that you're not going to be able to see because it has to be dark. And I don't know why, but my camera doesn't love to do dark. And then I've got these little potion bits that I'm going to pour in here. So you can fit quite a lot of shaker bits with that packaging. And I want to say that it came with, I think, my YouTube clacker thing. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. So next I want to stick these two down together, but I do want to add some more embellishment. And I'm adding these little holographic ball things just for more impact, I guess you could say, inside of the shaker. There's so many shaker bits that you can see them no matter what, but I just wanted to add these for just added kind of bling, I guess. Bling in a spooky way. Like little crystal balls floating through the air or something. Because remember, we're using a little ghost for our gnome. And then I'm just going to make sure that this tape is all good and burnished down. I'll use my little Trinity Stamps ergonomic bone folder. I think that's what it's called. Pretty. Okay, so now we'll just pull the backer off this tape. And the beauty of the circle and not putting your design on first is that it doesn't matter which direction you lay it in, as long as it's even on all sides, and it is. And because I use the tape, it's ready to go. And there's our standalone shaker. So now I can just add the little gnome. And of course some of him will have to be trimmed off because I don't want him covering everything. And I'm just going to decide where to put him. I want to maximize the amount. I want to make sure I've got his hat and everything. And then I'll just go ahead and get him glued down to that front. Scooch him where I want him. Let's get his little hand glued down. Get his little hat glued down. I'm not too worried about gluing it to the acetate because I'd have to add quite a bit of glue, and I don't want anything more oozing. I had a lot of oozing problems choosing the wrong glue. So now I'll just trim off the excess, and then we'll put this card together. And you'll see how easy it is to come together. And what I don't show off camera is cutting the second card frame. And what I did was I used our circle die that goes with the circle card, and then I used a smaller die, about a 1/4 inch smaller, to cut out both sides. So we're going to start with the inside of the card here. And I'm laying that across the top. Can you see the line? Matching up the line with the line on my grid so I can get my sentiment down straight. And I'm doing Halloween greetings. And the greetings I glued to that third piece of that cake that I cut out earlier. So you'll see here in a moment, or you can probably see it up there to the left. I'm not popping anything up here because this is the inside of the card. And I'll just glue down my greetings here. Right about there. So now we've got the inside of the card with our sentiment. And we have the card base. Next we need to glue down the shaker part. So I did want to show you that this right here is the frame, and it's going to go on top supporting the grill. So I'll go ahead and glue this just directly down and just make sure that at this point he's straight with the top. So I'm just going to kind of lay this where the line meets the top and move this around until I'm happy with the placement, because I do want him sitting, you know, kind of normal. Okay, looking good. Happy with that. So now here's the little frame. And the frame's going to support the little grate. So I'm just going to glue the back of the frame down to the card. And here's where you have to pay attention. Because I almost glued it on wrong, because it needs to open in the, well, it doesn't absolutely have to open in the same way, but it should. And see, I've laid it down where it opens to the side, and then I remember, wait, it's got to open from the top. So just going to pick it back up, find the top. The top will have a little bit of a flat edge, and I'm going to match those up. And so this is the main thing I wanted to show you. Decorate any way you want. Be fun to have a little Christmas tree, little Christmas shaker bits, what have you. Just as a little fun 3-layer card. And it doesn't have to be the grate either. It could be anything. But I am going to glue the grate down now to the frame. And I'm just adding glue along the edge here on the paper portion. And then I'll lay down my grate the way I want it. And what I want is I want the handle on top, so that somebody knows to grab the handle. And I'm just matching that up with the straight edge of that circle from the circle card die. Just making sure it's nice and straight on here. And then you can see that we've got a card that opens 3 ways. 2 ways. It's a 3-layer card. It's a thick one too, so, but it will fit in a standard size envelope. So pull one, and you can see him through the grate, but then you can see your shaker bits and all your glow in the dark stuff. And then pull another and look at your greeting. It's almost like a little slice of cake. And let me just pull this, clean this up so you can see it up a little bit closer without distraction. So there's our scary, spooky grate. There's our little ghosty gnome with ooze and slime and all kinds of things inside. And then there's our greeting. So I hope you like this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to the Trinity Stamps channel, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell so that you'll get notified every time we upload a new video. Thanks for stopping in. Everything's going to be listed down below. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.